Welcome to the Exhaust Notes Podcast.
What is good, everyone? Welcome to the Exhaust Notes Formula One Podcast, your new favorite Formula One podcast, your favorite Formula One podcast that uploads more inconsistently than anyone else on the internet. We are back to give some flowers, to celebrate some wins, to say our farewells to some. I don't know how to go with that one without making it really dark and sound like people are dying. Nobody died, but like guys are.
I think some careers died. I think Danny Rick's career died.
Part of my soul died.
Yeah. What's good, guys? How you been?
So, crazy story. We were we talked about taking a small break again and joked about taking breaks. And then apparently Helmut Marko got wind of a couple of our podcasts and heard me talking shit about him. So I've been hiding, and Nick and Ro didn't want to say anything publicly, but I've been in hiding for the last 3 to 4 weeks, hiding from a scary old Austrian man who was hunting me and my family.
Arnold Schwarzenegger,
so,
the Terminator.
Honestly, you can blame Helmut for our absence, because
can we talk about the fact that this
fair.
man's name is Helmut and he is covering a race car sport, and I've never made that connection before. So I'm just going to sit here and it's really funny because if there's one person that I think could benefit from wearing a helmet in their previous life, it could have been the aforementioned Helmut Marko, because the things he'd be spewing, as the kids say, are just out and out silly. Yeah.
Also, you know how the internet loves the so-and-so could do the funniest thing right now? Like meme or commentary. Imagine if Helmut Marko actually had a sense of humor and just showed up next season, Darth Helmet, Spaceballs.
I know where you're going with this, Nick. And my other thought is, we see the comically large baseball hats. Why can't we have the helmet version?
Man.
Yeah.
Or
somebody needs to make a mold for that.
Here's an even better one. Checo Perez's first race next year. His helmet should just be pictures of Helmet, like those trashy flea market t-shirts that are all the rage right now with the big No Limit Soldier font. Just have Helmet, and then when you flip the visor down, it just says Marko. And all I can think of is the Ricky Bobby Fig Newton. I do love Fig Newtons, but that's a hilariously dangerous sign in my face. Because he still might drive better than what he ended up doing this year.
Yeah, that is. Well, basically, we need more fun on the Formula One grid. I think this is where we come in, and honestly, we're really nothing against Todd's, family and himself being protected and staying out of the limelight for a while, but we're really only back because Carlos Sainz kind of came in and tried to steal some of the fun from us by dressing up as a chili pepper.
Why did he dress up as a chili pepper, Nick?
Because he lost a bet.
So the bet,
Zhou Guan Yu.
But the thing is, I don't even think Zhou accepted on anything. He just said it out on the radio. He being Carlos Sainz, saying, "Hey, if he gets a point before the season's over in that Sauber, I'm going to dress up as a chili pepper." And he did it because he's a man of the word. He's the prince that was promised. He's a man after my own heart. But at the end of the day, we're all giggling at it, but I don't think anybody was like, "No, Carlos, you really need a big old slice of humble pie. You have to wear this chili suit." That's just how he is, for better or for worse. He seems to be, and maybe this is off-season content we can milk because God knows we're going to need it for the next. Although the rate we're going, that might just be one episode we take in between now and the start of next season. The most well-adjusted.
February?
Now, my wife went to her Christmas party where one of our biggest fans, Miss Stephanie, was there. And my wife just asked, how's the Formula One season going? And without even batting an eyelash, she, being Miss Stephanie, goes, "Do those guys even record anymore?"
Hey. Tell her Helmut was after me.
Helmut was after. Listen, he's a dangerous man. But I guess let's do this, listeners. If we don't record between now and, let's say, mid-January, if we don't record by then, or if we do record an episode by then, I will wear some sort of large, comically hilarious food costume that best suits my personality or my nationality, depending on how racist we want to be.
Do they make a giant...
Tread lightly.
What are those called?
Don't say taco, because I guarantee there's some listener that thinks I'm Hispanic.
No, Ro. Not with all those OnlyFans names. What's the little empanada type of thing?
The samosa?
Samosa.
Yeah.
Do they make a giant samosa costume?
I feel like if I can get an empanada costume and I wear it and I put a red dot on my head, a bindi, who's going to be "Actually, sir, that's an empanada"?
I think Franco Colapinto might.
Yeah,
He's
that's
very
true.
serious
Although,
about his
tangent, I had a friend in undergrad who loved those samosas, didn't know what they were called, but said, "Man, I love your culture's wizard hats." And I'm like, "Wizard hat? What the fuck is he talking about?" And my man said, They look like the Sorting Hat from the Harry Potter franchises, and now that's all I see anytime I walk down the local Indian grocery aisle. I'm like, man, that man wasn't kidding. They do look like a bunch of Sorting Hats. I guess they choose
I'm
house...
1,000% going to call them wizard hats from now on.
Please do it. I choose house diabetes, house high cholesterol.
As you can tell, we are off to a great start. We haven't talked anything about really anything Formula One. So if you're new here, welcome to the show. No apologies.
Ro, you never said like how you were, because I was obviously in hiding for the last month, but
I was also in hiding out of respect for my Yakubian brother, Ghost of K-Meg's Pass, which, listeners, I know you won't be able to see this because we're not that heavy into the video, but it's some of the finest punnery I've seen all year. So my kudos to you, Toddsy. Like, great punsmanship as always. And then Nick continues to be the steadying hand that every team needs, which is the guy that says, hey guys, let's not get fired today. He is the living embodiment of that, and I really appreciate that about Nick. So
I want to see him fly off the handle one of these times.
Yeah, he is. It's going to be like, what's his face from that old movie Network, where he's just going to be like, stop talking. Just stop. Yeah. I have to deal with you
PC
in 2 podcasts. Just once make a point salient to the conversation and not take it somewhere weird. Those are tears.
Makes me sound like I'm some sort of, authoritarian figure on this podcast.
No.
A bit of a helmet. I think he's calling you a bit of a helmet.
Can we call that the episode title? A bit of a helmet?
A bit of a helmet?
That's the new way to call somebody a dick? He's a bit of a helmet.
Wait, if we're thinking about it, and also speaking of the Spaceballs look, what did Dark Helmet look like?
Yep. Exactly. A bit of a helmet.
Bit of a helmet. Surrounded by assholes.
Anyway, how are you, Nick?
Hey, I'm good. I'm happy to be back talking to you guys. I haven't laughed like this. I'm telling you. Like, I have a pretty good life, but I don't laugh the way I laugh talking to you guys on this show. Hardly ever. And I miss you guys.
I miss you too.
Miss you too. I feel like I haven't missed you in a sense because I listen to you all the time. Is that weird? Like, I'm a fan of your other podcasts, so I listen to you frequently.
That's
for both of you. Like,
it's kind of an interesting side effect.
Shameless plug time
of podcasting.
The Nick Engvall Cinematic Universe has brought a lot of joy to people, so please join our Patreon, where you can support Nick and his endeavors in Crown and Stitch, Cars and Kicks, Sneaker History, this one, and who's to say?
New stuff in 2025.
Yeah, exactly.
And I do honestly think, like, we got to figure out a way to do... I don't know if, like, every race is, like, our cup of tea, if that makes sense, because we try to do episodes and then we're just like, if we're not within like a couple days window or like
of the race,
we're like, okay, well let's just move on to the next one. I feel like the three of us all kind of do that. And then like we've also struggled to like be able to watch all the races in a timely fashion this year. Like, I know I didn't get to see everything even within, I usually go back and watch, but like this is probably the first year that I like literally did like the YouTube recap of like 4 or 5 races, and I like just never do that. Like, I watched
maybe that's our
every
pivot
race.
Next year. We don't watch the full races. We just go off of the YouTube recaps
and just completely make up wild stories about what happened.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a lot of news though, so we should talk about it. I mean,
we should maybe recap the last 3 since we haven't just.
All right. Do you want to do that?
Sure. So we had Vegas, which actually again
was a great race.
Was a good race, right?
Always a good race.
I feel like that track, like, it's weird because if I was to describe it, it's kind of boring. Like, the track itself isn't especially exciting, and even like the camera angles and stuff, other than that one down the straight finish around that first turn that's like big swooping left-hander. There's not really any cool angles and stuff on that track, but it seems like there's always good racing for some reason. And
when we first saw that track, you, my brother, and Aaron were all like, "Yeah, this is not going to be worth watching at all." And I feel
it was going to be like a DRS train like the whole time.
Yeah, I feel like it's been completely the opposite of that every race so far.
I think a lot of it this year had to do with like temperature because it was so cold.
But even last year, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, the overarching memory I had of the inaugural Vegas GP race in the modern time was the fact that, was it Carlos Sainz who ran over something that he wasn't supposed to, or something melted?
He had a manhole cover. And
Yeah.
Came
We didn't
undone.
really hit it. He
went over it and it pulled it up. The drag pulled it up.
yeah, sucked it up into his butt.
Imagine that. Imagine your first viewing of Formula One, which that race was for many people, I'm sure, because it was Vegas, right? And before the race even starts, a guy sucked something into his butt during qualifying.
Well, you mean the guy that dresses like a chili? That guy?
There was some meme from last year where it was joking about how he had went out to eat and had bad food at one of the buffets or whatever, and then because that one shot where he drove over it when he's driving towards the camera and just the ass into the car exploded, somebody connected all that into a meme about him shitting so hard the car exploded. So
we've all
never gonna forget that one. Yeah,
the internet remains undefeated.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, Vegas was a good race again. That's where Max clinched, right? The Drivers' Championship. So that had some importance, I guess. Title number 4. He's now tied with
Seb. I believe Prost. Yep.
Does he have 4?
Prost? I thought Prost had 2 or 3.
I thought,
because I feel like
Seb and Prost were the only ones that had 4.
While we continue to glam on that, what else was there from a racing perspective? Was Abu Dhabi next or Qatar? Qatar was next.
Qatar.
I just met the way it's. We're unloading 6 episodes worth of dad jokes, listeners. Just grin and bear it.
We got them lined up. We got them.
Yeah.
Hot takes with cool dudes. Well, we need to get an actual soundboard on the show where we can just drop hot takes with cool dudes.
We will definitely have that before next season starts.
I will also grow a mustache in anticipation of that episode.
I'll do it too. I'll mess. Yeah, I'll mess around.
Yep.
Prost had 4.
Prost had
4. Okay.
Excellent. Juan Manuel Fangio is at 5. Lewis and Michael Schumacher at 7. Kind of hard to argue against Max being an all-time great when he's literally in the top 6 drivers of all time already.
And how many seasons has it been for Max? 6?
No, 8 now. I think because he started at 17.
Oh, that's okay.
And he's 25. I think
he's had 209 starts, 112 podiums. Damn, he's had. So,
as somebody that got into the sport prior to him, or rather after he came into the sport, what was his hype and his reputation coming into Formula One? Was this always a possibility, or has he even kind of surprised even his staunchest defenders with how prolific he's been?
No, I would say he's the last one since Lewis, where he came in and you knew he was gonna win pretty much immediately. Granted, when he came in, 16? He won a race his first year, but he, just to show you how big of a deal it was when he came in, they actually changed the rule for age limits after Max.
And now I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, and now we're seeing something similar this year with Kimi. So Antonelli, as both of my co-hosts look at me like I've got 3 heads, as if Raikkonen's coming back.
God, don't tease me.
With a good time.
I'd rather have him come back than Ricciardo.
I would want them to be on the same team, and it would truly be every buddy cop show, or we could call it Lethal Weapon, because I feel Kimi would utter and finish, "I'm too old for this shit," at least once a day.
Definitely. I feel like Kimi probably was saying that at Max's age, to be honest. He was just, I think he loved it, but I think he just was he's just so over any bullshit whatsoever. But
what?
Also, go ahead.
No, I was going to, please.
I was just going to say, so Max wins the title. He also got another trophy, or announced another trophy on the way, right?
Right. Congrats to him and his partner.
The ex-Mrs. Kvyat, whose name, Kelly Piquet.
She's the daughter of
Nelson.
Anyone? There you go.
Who's second to
Helmut
Marko in the
racism.
Bit of a Helmut standings.
That soundboard needs to have.
You circled back to that. I'm so glad you circled back to that.
That soundboard has to have a soundbite about Bit of a Helmut.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I feel like that's the true mark of a podcast.
So that's Vegas. That's the championship locked up. And then we
Cutter.
Right. And then we got to deal with the constructors.
The FIA, well, no, Cutter was like had serious implications. It could have been even closer in Abu Dhabi if the FIA just decided to not leave somebody's wing mirror laying in the middle of the track for somebody else to run over and give Sainz a puncture, take him out of the points. Pretty insane. Like that whole
sequence
race was, let's see, Lando got a 10-second penalty. Lewis got a drive-through penalty. K-Mag got a penalty. Yuki got a penalty. Liam Lawson got a penalty. Did Albon get one for forcing Magnussen off the track? I think he did, if memory serves correct. That whole race was just craziness. It wasn't necessarily a good race, but it was action-packed because of all the shenanigans. Let me see. What was it? Ocon crashed, or was about to crash into Albon, and then ended up crashing into Colapinto, taking them both out on turn 1.
Oh, yeah. Damn, I forgot about that.
And Sergio spun for no reason. Took himself out of the points. And then DNF'd, I'm pretty sure, for some reason.
Yep. Your buddy Lance Stroll DNF'd.
Well, speaking of a bit of a helmet, can we give that the Lance Stroll bit of a helmet memorial?
Well, it's got to be in memoriam of Helmut Marko, even though he's unfortunately still with us.
Just wait until he's on Cameo, and I spend $500 getting him to say "bit of a helmet" to you, Todd Yates.
That'd be the best present I ever got.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Better than the rollerblades I got when I was 8. Anyway, that was just like a psychotic Grand Prix, which I think Qatar's never really a great race either. Because most of the people don't seem to, I don't know, care to be there or whatever.
What was Lando's penalty for again? It was the yellow.
Yeah,
yellow
speeding under yellow. He didn't lift, and he totally snitched on, or Max totally snitched on him.
Oh yeah, instantly.
And then Max also called out Russell for snitching on Max. That was
Tangent or parking lot, which, hey, it works two ways now because we're a Formula One podcast. Put a pin on the the Max and George beef, because that was the other fun subplot at the end of the year, was the driver seating arrangement at the customary, or at least the now customary end of year banquet. That this year, for whatever reason, there was no Aston Martin representation or Haas representation. I think those are the only two teams that were missing from that.
No, I think one of the Haas drivers was there.
Yeah, I think Hulkenberg came for dessert.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yep.
And for some reason, Terry paid for it.
Really?
Yeah. I was like, why wouldn't the champion driver foot the bill?
This is probably the most well-known bill, because everybody's very confident saying this was only $5,000, which I'm like, I feel like that's a little too low. That's like those guys going for a Happy Meal at McDonald's. Like,
yeah,
they should easily.
If anybody out there that has more access to Formula One as an entity than we do can give us the rundown on who pays for this dinner every year, I would love to go back as far as we can go and see what drivers paid for this.
But I only feel like this has been done in the last 2-3 years, so it's not even that long of a event that we would have to scour the tomes of Formula One history to be like, well, actually, somebody got extra onion rings. Not going to mention any names, Latifi.
But I think it's gone on longer than has been publicly known. That's my theory.
The drivers' dinner?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure that's been a thing for a long time.
It's I don't want to say it's common in racing, but it's definitely like certain level of professionalism across different forms of motorsport do a very similar thing. And I wonder, I wonder actually if that happens in other sports, like, I feel like if we're going back to like basketball and the Bulls, I feel like it's always a bet between MJ and somebody else.
I feel like
who pays for that dinner.
Jed Bushler must have picked up a tab here or there alongside Luke Longley and Bill Winnington and all the non-brothers of the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah.
So I had to look it up. I'm glad this came up because I remember a clip when Bottas was walking into the paddock and they asked him how much it was, and he said it was $15,000.
I'm sorry. So that feels more on brand.
You said the whatever in dirham is the currency in Abu Dhabi.
I'll do that mental math. You guys keep
which
going.
Which equates to $4,000 USD.
Oh, so we were right.
Which is not
that's not a lot.
So I gave it 25% tip, because I'm sure Bottas is a generous tipper, like he is a generous lover. So let's round up to 5,000. Good on Terry, but that one got you, Todd?
Yeah, but that's not.
I mean, I think this is just like a general state of the American dollar compared to most places in the world. Like my brother just came back from China for work, doing like factory stuff for his stuff, and like he's basically like, yeah, it's just way more affordable there. Like I was in Tokyo earlier in the year. I mean, I could literally live there for a third of what I spend on average here in California.
I'm sure.
But I feel like it's just common.
Even then, even once you do the conversion, $5,000 for 17, 18 drivers feels like a pretty cheap meal, especially if they're one in a super nice place and of course, like probably drinking heavily.
Are there any other drivers on the grid that are like Lewis that don't drink?
Probably for like contractual reasons or like to stay fit for the races. Like George probably is like has one like non-alcoholic beer and he's like, woo,
Now I was going to say this. I feel like speaking of the non-alcoholic thing.
I hope like for George, all the other people that we have that like we kind of have a little bit of, I don't know, like angst towards their general persona. I hope one day like it turns out to be that he's like he literally is like the gentleman, like he's like been growing like weed under his farms and lords and all that stuff one day, and we're gonna
see an ayahuasca documentary on George Russell.
Apparently in that documentary there's a scene where Aaron Rodgers makes out with a weird hippie lady, and I'm like, why
not?
No, but I mean,
let the boy live. All right,
here's the thing. My thought is this: in terms of the drinks at this dinner, I bet you they're all comped like Heineken 0.0, whatever that non-alcoholic beer that you always see the commercials for. And if it's not that, it's Lewis's non-alcoholic agave spirit. So, and then
could be.
These guys don't strike me as the most voracious of eaters. So what are we thinking? Like 18 salads between all of them?
No, they probably got like a bunch of appetizers and then like took 3 bites of a pasta.
What, like
dish,
fried cheese curds? You think that's what's popping in the streets in Dubai?
Abu Dhabi. Yeah, they can do whatever they want, man. Abu Dhabi's like a circus.
Okay,
speaking.
Cutter.
One more tangent down the. Speaking of alcohol, Sergio Perez post-season delivered 2,000 bottles of his tequila sponsor, to the factory at Red Bull. How awkward is that? Like you show up to deliver a bunch of tequila to the factory that's probably going to fire you in a couple of weeks. Like,
I think
I get it. It was probably a pre-planned thing.
I honestly think it was a please don't fire me.
He's just begging for his job. Look,
yeah, this is him. Here's tequila. Merry Christmas. The label is his entire family looking as slovenly as possible. Be like, do you really want to take us out of house and home? Although I feel
again, not cheap.
Not cheap, but put it this way. Let's say if Perez loses his job, which we don't want to wish upon anybody, especially during the holidays, like I feel like he and Terry would be the most tailor-made, tailor-ready NASCAR drivers in the wings.
Yeah, I don't know. Terry, I could see. Like we've talked about Danny Rick. Terry, I could see. Checo, he doesn't give me like Juan Pablo Montoya vibes. I say that because he actually drove an F1 and then went to drive on NASCAR and actually was pretty successful.
I mean, I don't think anybody goes from F1 to NASCAR unless other forms of racing are not an option.
That's fair.
Juan Pablo went to kart or IndyCar or whatever it was, right? IRL before he went to NASCAR.
Thought you were going to say ayahuasca again.
I also think NASCAR was like popping at the time.
It was.
So it felt like you're going to a same tier kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's not like that anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder if maybe Checo has something on the Red Bull team, like other than big money sponsors.
He has a picture of Helmut Marko wearing just a helmet.
I bet maybe Christian Horner sent him a picture of his thumb on accident, if you know what I mean.
Be something.
Speaking of Abu Dhabi, what happened in that last race, Todd? Going back to what we were initially...
Yep. How dare you try to get us back on track?
I feel like I have to do it at least once an episode, so then I can continue to be the goofy one of the group.
I mean, I want to say that there was again some
chicanery.
Well,
yes.
I think going. Anyone who says I'm gonna pistol whip the next motherfucker that says shenanigans.
Hey Nick, what's that place with all that goofy shit on the wall you like so much?
Oh man, so what was it, a 1-2 start for McLaren, and then not almost immediately. I would say about a third of the way into the race, Oscar. Wait, no, did he get? Was it first corner?
It was first. Yeah, it was first corner. I think
him and Max did a little pirouette.
Yep.
And then past that, Ferrari had a hell of a drive. Both of them did. Ended up 2-3, but Lando took the win, so all for naught. And McLaren, my brilliant, beautiful baby boy papaya, took the Constructors for the first time since 1998.
With 666 points.
Truly the mark of the devil, because chicanery was implemented in these last two races to ensure that would happen.
I think Zach Brown's deal with the devil is finally coming true.
Did he vote for
Can
Trump?
you think about... I mean, probably. Think about this. In 2015, they had a almost barren car with sponsors. They had a crappy Honda engine. That was
Watch your mouth.
Sorry.
That was for you, Nick. Happy holidays.
Even Honda will say they didn't do well.
I know Aaron's listening. We gotta look out.
We got to protect our three listeners. We've already mentioned Aaron. We've got Iron Trev seething about not getting the Senna shoes that Todd got. We just have to figure out how to work Julie into it, and we'll be good.
Exactly.
Don't forget Miss Stephanie.
I mean,
our one Stan. So, what the hell was I going to say?
It's not like we do this professionally, ladies and gentlemen. But I think you were mentioning about the fact that the glow up of McLaren was very real, because in 2020, right. Yep, go for it, Todd.
No, I was just going to say from 2015, I was saying GP2 engine. That's why the Honda thing. That's the famous line from Fernando when he was with the team. To now, to winning the Constructors, like Zach Brown had to have made a deal with the devil, or sold the team to
MBS,
oil money, basically. So yeah, congrats to them. I'm pretty excited. I almost bought one of their championship T-shirts, but then I remembered the last time I got a McLaren jersey thing, and it was like $85, and it looked like I got it on Alibaba, basically. So I was like, maybe I don't want to give them money.
Alibaba, you're showing. Yeah,
I was gonna say everybody's on DHgate now. Temu.
Or Temu. Sorry, don't keep up the times. Those newfangled.
Also, kind of crazy that it came down to the last race of the season for the Constructors when. This also just goes back to Sergio, and I just don't understand how he's still on the team, considering Red Bull didn't have a chance to win the Constructors even 4 or 5 races back.
Because Red Bull is just Max Verstappen Racing Incorporated at this point. That's all they care about. They will not care about anything else, I would say, for at least till 2030 at the earliest, depending on when we want to pencil in Max's inevitable retirement.
Yeah, I wonder what the money side of that is. I know it's 10 to 15 million per place.
It's about 10 million.
Okay, about 10 million. Does that work the same? If your driver wins the championship, does the team get a bonus for that? No.
Just the Constructors.
Yeah.
So they went from first place, because I think you're right, it was 5 races to go. They were still in first.
Yeah.
Just barely. And they finished third in the Constructors, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. So the last $30 million thanks to Checo. I saw a wild stat, actually, that his total points from the third race of the season last year, including all of that last year plus this year, is the same amount of points that Max scored from Miami to the end of the season.
And this year alone.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was something like that. I might be mixing up stats here, but it was a crazy stat that in 2 seasons, Checo scored basically what Max scored for the last 2/3 of this year. Something like that.
That's crazy. Yeah, the other thing that I thought was really interesting is Lewis and George actually both had a lot of good drives, like the latter third of the season.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first year I was trying to go back, I think since like 2013, that McLaren hasn't been in the top 3 in the constructors.
Mercedes,
sorry.
No, you're good.
Because it's definitely all through the Lewis era they were top 1 or 2.
It does feel like an end of an era in a sense, because I've gotten into the sport when I feel like you have seen drivers so closely associated with their teams in a way that I don't think was previously there, but you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. But I am going to be messing up at least the next 2 years worth of podcast because Lewis will not be at Mercedes. So that slip is going to happen just because of the fact that they've been synonymous. He and they have single-handedly been responsible for ushering in a new generation of fan. And that's even before like the Netflix influence. It's just people tend to be fans of a sport when they're at their teenage years. And I think for a lot of people, Lewis got them into the sport in a way this is probably a lazy comparison, but I'll make it anyway. The same way that I think Tiger Woods got a lot of people into golf that previously were not there. So I think that ultimately is going to be his legacy. And much like Tiger wearing a victory red on Friday, I guess on Sunday, are we going to see similar victories for Lewis next year when he goes to Ferrari in a victory red? But that's for another topic later down the show. But it's just interesting that we're going to see such upheaval in next season.
It is interesting to think about like trajectories, right? Because Ferrari is definitely, obviously a new season. It's a reset. It's not like you're completely starting over, but you're still starting over. But their trajectory as a team is definitely up. Like there's been a lot less of the shit show that we saw at the beginning of this season, the last 2 years prior, where decisions were made that just didn't make sense, back and forth on the radio. You're still going to have a little of that stuff, but like generally speaking, if you would have, like, I don't know when we get to our hot takes episode, I don't know what our hot takes were with Ferrari as a team, but they were nowhere near what Ferrari landed at as a team, in my opinion.
Shout out to Freddie V.
Yeah. And then on top of that, like, Lewis is driving way better, and like Mercedes, George too, but like, I think just seeing Lewis get a win, like
first time in 2 years or 3.
Yeah, I think 2. Yeah. And like, maybe
which is
even
absurd
more
to say considering where we were coming out of in that last era. We would tell past us, oh, by the way, Lewis is not going to win a race for 2 full seasons. Like we knew that there was a drop off, and not necessarily associated with him, but more so the team. But that's still absurd to kind of say out loud.
Yeah. Also, shout out to the freaking team that does the content for Mercedes. Those like recap videos of Lewis's like had me in tears. And like, it's not like he's retiring from the sport. He's just going to a different team. But the Mercedes team did an incredible job with all those videos that they cranked out the last couple of weeks.
Hope that gets made into a documentary at some point. Like they've done with Senna and they've done with like Fangio and like things like that. But like that level of dominance, we'll probably never see that again, especially the way that they're structuring the sport to have more parity. Man, like that one, especially I think they posted after the last race was crazy from where he came to. And then,
Yeah, Ferrari's got to step up their game.
No, but I mean, even
their content game,
the content game. I mean, to get people excited about it,
Speaking of drivers leaving, I'm 4 years late to this, but I didn't see the McLaren video that they made for Sainz when he was going to Ferrari, where they had various members of their staff speaking Italian. Like that's another one where, it's not a sad time, but it's kind of a melancholy time. Is how I would describe it.
It is interesting. Like something you mentioned, like the drivers sticking with teams thing feels relatively new to me. I feel like it's easy to look right now and say like, okay, well, you've got Max, you've got Lewis, you've got Seb, and you've got Michael Schumacher, and that takes you back into the mid 2000s. And those drivers stayed with the same team for their dominant era. But prior to that, I don't think that's been the case for really anybody. Like I think that's also what Todd's saying about they're having to adjust the sport because of this, right? Like, not only did these handful of guys over the last 30 years just dominate, but like they were dominant drivers, the teams were dominant. Like it really was like the perfect storm for each of these pairings that we had in ways that I don't think we've ever seen in other sports. Like it's super rare that you see back-to-back wins in like Le Mans.
I was going to
or,
say
you know,
this,
stuff like that.
Nick, relative noob to the sport, the American sport that I think Formula One, in terms of its winning structure, borrows the most from is college football in terms of it seems to be a legacy sport. It seems to be a blue blood sport. It seems to be a sport of the haves and the have-nots. And I'll mention Alabama. I'll mention Clemson. I'll mention your favorite college football team from when you grew up or when you were an undergrad listener. It's just that's how it felt to me coming into the sport with no preconceived notions other than what the directors of Drive to Survive gave me in 2.5 seasons at that point. And that's how I always kind of associate Formula One in my brain, because it does seem to be a sport that's built on tradition. It's built on legacy. There is an inherent status symbol associated with it, but then it's also kind of wrapped up in this like trashy Euro vibe, much the same way we consider SEC sports or SEC football to be very important to that region's economy and its identity, but then it's still kind of the first to get memed and made fun of more than any other sport in America that I can think of.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good comparison. I mean, and even with college football, though, like those teams have shifted so much over the years, right? Like, you know, when like for me, the teams that I think of being dominant in college football are like Miami and Notre Dame, and you know, like, but I'm not like a huge college football fan. Like I was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, watching like pretty regularly, but it is kind of interesting. Is there anything, I mean, are there any other sports that like, I don't really follow hockey closely enough to like, I mean, I just know that the Sharks always suck. And even when they get close to being good, they suck in the playoffs. So like basically they grow beards to lose. I don't know how that works because like that's supposed to be a macho manly thing, but it doesn't work for the Sharks.
It's not just the Sharks. I'm not a Sharks fan, but I follow them because they're right down the street.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is weird that it's hard to compare it to other sports dynasties, but like you both said, like the ones that are always memorable long term is when the right driver hits the right team at the right time. And you could say that about like few things, like, you know, the Yankees or the late 2000s Giants when they were every other year, but it just has to be that right timing. And
yeah,
with Formula One getting closer and closer together, I think we'll see less and less of that, or maybe we'll see more if the cars are really close and the drivers are making all the difference instead of making, you know, that extra last 10% or whatever. Maybe we'll see it less, but I do want to share. This made me think of something that Trev posted in the Discord. Shameless plug for the Discord. Go join it and scream into the void during the off season when we're missing Formula One.
We're going to post more episodes in the off season. I promise you that, listener.
Some guy was keeping track of ultimate race pace versus finishing order from Miami onward. And out of those races, which is like, I don't know,
I feel like 17 or probably
something like that.
17 out of the 23 this year. Let's go with that number.
So Max only had the fastest car 4 times out of all of those races, and he still won the Drivers' Championship, which is insane to think about. Like that's a level of dominance, because you brought it up earlier, Nick, that he's already amongst the greatest of all time.
Yeah, with
his 4th Drivers' Championship, but like that to me is almost a more dominant performance by Max than it was last season when he won 22 out of the 24 races or whatever it was. I think Checo won 1 and Carlos won 1, something like that. But that performance, if you don't have the fastest car, except for 4 races, and you still win the Drivers' Championship, that's insane.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a point we've made in other sports, and I'll make it with this one. Good players win one specific way. Great players win it in a myriad of different ways, and I think this is the year we truly saw Max's greatness cemented, where he was able to not only just win because he had the fastest car, we were able to see him manage tires, be the right amount of street smart and the right amount of book smart. Like, we got to see him evolve. I mean, I think if you listen to the first couple episodes of this particular season in our podcast, the broken record theme I kept harping on is the fact that he's evolving, he's growing. It's no longer I'm angry at the world. I'm angry at the world, but I'm not going to show you how angry I am, which ultimately to me makes you an even more dangerous racer.
Yeah, I think too. It just speaks volumes for Red Bull's strategy too, right? I mean, even without Checo being, Checo was definitely hanging in there for the first third of the season, maybe, where that you have that little bit of like, you can play the cat and mouse game a little bit. You can push drivers around a little bit, and you just have an advantage if you have two competitive cars. But with Max, like, I mean, that's an insane stat. Like, that's another stat where I would love to be able to see that stat for like the history of the sport. Like, if you went back and looked at Michael Schumacher, at Lewis Hamilton, at Seb, all of the guys that we kind of like call the greatest of all time at some point or another, is that the case for them, or were they like really just like in a super dominant car? Not trying to take away from them as drivers, because obviously you still got to be able to like do your thing with a perfect car. But yeah, that's a wild stat, because I mean, how many wins did Max end up with this season?
It wasn't as many. It was like 11, 13, something like that. This was the most parity we've had in Formula One in like the last decade plus, I think. There was, I think, six drivers with multiple wins this year, and then 7 teams had a win, something like that.
Yeah.
I hate to bring it back to the teams and players I like. This feels eerily similar to last year when the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, because all we heard going into that Super Bowl was this is a year that the Chiefs weren't going to win because the offense wasn't there, the defense wasn't ready, but lo and behold, they got it done. I'm happy about that. But now this feels eerily similar in the fact that I think in hindsight, the more and more we get removed from this season, the more and more I think we're all going to look at the grid like, you idiots, you had him down on the ground. You just couldn't put him away. And now he's about to win 5. He's about to win 6, whatever that ungodly number is.
I mean, I feel like that's how it was with the Giants when they went through their 3 wins in 2010, 2012, and 2014. It was like they were absolutely not expecting to win in 2010 because it was all young kids. Like, this is like rookie season for like guys who ended up being great, but like by the time the next 2 seasons, the next 2 championships came around, you had a little bit of that team left, but like the core of the people that you thought the team would depend on was completely different. And even in those moments, you're going into it and like, for baseball, like all those guys were aging out, like the 2012, 2014 teams were like, these are guys that should probably retire or are really close to it. And they were still able to win. I think that's kind of like, it makes Max winning more impressive to me because we expect him to win and he wins. A lot of times, like there's like a huge advantage to not expecting a team to win. And, like, I think that's like the funnest part about Formula One for me still, this season being the proof of like, when you get the rules right to get people competitive, maybe they're not competitive all at the front of the grid, but like competitive, let's say 2 through 12 are fairly competitive. It makes for really interesting racing. Like you said, 6 different, multi-race winners, all that kind of stuff. So I hope that, I still think they should make the cars a little bit smaller, but otherwise, like the sport is evolving into a really cool place right now.
I also said in my stats earlier that 7 different teams had a win, which is so not true. That would be amazing if it was true, if that did happen. But
I was going to say, I think 4?
4 teams with a win. Yeah,
although,
7 would be insane.
How many were on the podium? Because obviously those 4. Alpine is 5. Do we have any other?
We got seven winners though, right? 4 teams, but 7 winners.
Yeah.
So
we had George, Lewis,
Carlos,
Max,
all the big
Max, Carlos, Charles,
Leclerc,
and Oscar. So Checo was the only one, and I thought Checo might have won 1 this year, because then that feels like there would be 8 winners. No,
I don't think so. I don't think Checo had any wins. I think he had a couple of podiums the first 3 or 4 races, and then
but we saw
pretty much shit the bed after that.
Representatives from 5 teams in the podiums, right? Because it's the aforementioned 4 teams we just talked about. Alpine got that tremendous result in Brazil, but I can't think of any other podiums. Like, I don't think Fernando got any podiums this year, did he?
I don't think so.
Obviously,
I think Alpine had another podium late in, wasn't it Vegas?
Gasly got 3rd. I'm trying to remember which race.
Was it Vegas, I think?
It could be.
I'm not sure. Anyway, good season overall. wrapping up to be probably one of the better ones in the last decade.
So that's going to tell me. Go ahead.
I would agree.
Yeah, I would agree as well. I would just say, go ahead, Todd. Sorry.
It just depends on who you root for, right? You could talk about, the Crown Ferrari hat wants to interrupt. He's officially off the SD Bessie train. I just want to.
No, that's not true.
I want to call
that's
for those of us that
true.
are just listening.
In fact, the only reason I bought this hat, it was cool. Todd mentioned it was like supporting the Yankees, and I'm okay with that. I like plucky underdogs like this Ferrari outfit. I don't even think I'm pronouncing it correctly. Ferrari? No, that's on me, listener. I will try to get you to catch that train of thought as I filibuster a little bit more. But no, it's going to be a good season. The point I was going to make is watch it be the most boring season of Drive to Survive because they don't know how to actually handle drama that's real and authentic, and they are going to be grasping at straws in terms of manufacturing some artificial drama. But, if there's one person that can do that, it's the collective Netflix hive mind. Todd, did I buy you enough time?
No, but I do. We've also not talked about probably the most important thing because we are, if not fans of other teams, we're fans of Team America, and we have Cadillac joining the grid in 2026. We're a little over 1 year away from having an American-owned team actually operating in America and actually trying. They're going to have a UK base, obviously, because they have to. But
where would the headquarters be?
Probably, I think Andretti Global has, because they operate teams in like WEC and NASCAR and IndyCar. I'm pretty sure it's in North Carolina is where their base is. I want to say
that's also where Haas's base is as well, if I remember.
Indianapolis, actually.
Oh, that makes more sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. I am not. This sounds un-American, and only in the sense that you set up this story, but I'm not a fan of like an American-based Formula One team trying to be like we're an American-based Formula One team. I don't think having a home base in America necessarily is the right choice for a sport that only does things in America, 4 times out of 23?
So a typical American here wants to go invade other countries and put our base on their soil.
All your base.
No, I see it is. I see it as.
Yeah, but I mean, Todd,
Zach Brown's an American, but he runs a Formula One team out of the UK.
He's got a weird accent that almost borders on Dutch sometimes because he can't figure out whether he wants to be British in some words, but that's neither here nor there.
I mean, maybe that's because he's spending so much time over there at the McLaren HQ.
I'm surprised he doesn't have a Middle Eastern accent for how much time he's over there selling the team to them.
Sir, allegedly.
No, I want to push back on what. Explain to me why you're not excited to have an American team operating.
I'm excited to have an American team. I just don't think that, Haas is an American team, right? Like, it's different, and I'm like super excited to have some form of the Andretti family tree in Formula One, but I just don't know if like the placement of headquarters and being in America is in any way advantageous to any of that.
I don't think it is. I think it's just a figurehead thing. It's the same way that Adidas has a American headquarters in Portland, Oregon, but I think all big decisions are still happening over there in the
Fatherland.
Sorry.
Correction. Deutschland.
Danke.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess like maybe I'm also kind of just like, is it going to be an American team? And are we eventually going to have an American driver? Or is it just going to be like, cool, we like, fill, the Sauber hole if Sauber leaves the grid or something like that. I don't know.
Well, Sauber's going to be Audi, right? So at least
in 26.
Until Audi pulls the plug, whatever. And then Haas is still operating for now until...
Allegedly.
Yeah, they exist. I shouldn't say they're operating. Although they did have a pretty good end of the season, so I'm excited for them. But the fact that we're going to have, for the first time, it won't be until 28, we're going to have an American Works team for the first time in, I think, like the 60s or 70s, something like that. It's been a really long time since we had a Works team here, but I'm excited about it. I didn't think it was ever going to happen. But it turns out all they had to do was like slightly change the name and kick Michael Andretti off of the operating day to day or whatever, and we're good.
Is that even oh my goodness, ambassadorial? I don't know. Sorry, take a shot, listener. But that's the crazy part to me is you got somebody in that first family of racing, and you're like, no, we're good, man. We don't need you. We need your money.
He apparently rubbed every single person he came across the wrong way, and once they got it over the hump, the guy that runs TWG or whatever the parent company is of Andretti Motorsport is also an investor in Cadillac or has some ownership there or ties to that. So they got Cadillac more on board, saying, yeah, we'll do a works team by 28, and they just put Michael Andretti as
the sacrificial lamb.
Yeah, pretty much. Like he's still a consultant ambassador, as you said, or tried to say.
Blee. What you laughing at, pig boy?
But hey, whatever works. I don't care if it's Cadillac or Andretti or whatever.
Speaking of works, Todd, who is going to be the constructor provider for them for the first 2 years? Ferrari is? Okay. And they still are also providing Haas, right? So Ferrari will have 3 teams on the grid in theory?
Yep.
I just discovered why I'm not excited about this.
Please drop some knowledge.
So, Andretti Global was sold to Mark Walter's TWG Global Holding Company, which is also the owner of the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Oh, Todd Bowley.
It was just in my gut that I couldn't be excited about this, Todd.
You just knew.
Yeah.
Well, we're both repping Dodger Blue as you're talking about it, so...
That's true. I prefer to think of this hoodie as a Hirachi colorway, like Scream Green Hirachi.
I was going to say, that looks more Seattle Seahawksy and a retro spiel than anything.
I like blue. It's just that,
I get it.
It's a pretty crazy thing. I am actually, if Michael Andretti was a bit of a helmet during all of his conversations with the Formula One people, then I hope that like the whatever team is presented, whatever leadership is presented, it actually works out. Like that's kind of I guess that's also kind of like digging into that a little bit is like I feel like not sometimes, but most of the time as Americans, we tend to be like, we do this our way and we do this and, Team America, fuck yeah, kind of shit. And I think that's really corny. So to have the like braggadocious American storyline feels like, are we just forcing this upon it again? Like, are we just going to like shoot ourselves in the foot? Kind of the way that we talk about like Formula One becoming this kind of circus at most of the races in America. It's like, I don't know. Like I just have like layers of feelings around it. I want an American team. I would love to see, there are so many drivers that I would love to see, like Valentino Rossi's from, Northern California. Like he could definitely drive,
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, Nick.
I agree, but sorry, Cobra.
No, I was just going to say, Nick, what is your desired dream setup then for an American team? If you're not liking what we're going to get from Cadillac, at least in the first couple of years.
And why is it Logan Sargent?
So part of my hesitation around all of our entries into, let's say, what I would say is like top tier global racing, whether that's, World Endurance Challenge, Formula One, Le Mans type stuff, all of that, like we're running these businesses through the American hierarchy of racing, right? Like your first statement on like where the team is located is North Carolina, because that's where all the fucking NASCAR teams are. And like that to me is problematic. Like I'd rather see somebody say, and I know this is like big dreams and probably will never happen in my lifetime. I'd rather see somebody come in and say, no, we're going to do something completely new. We're going to be based in Portland, Oregon. Like I don't care where, but like Indianapolis is the other hub of motorsports in America by American motorsport standards. I don't like American motorsports for the most part. When I think about, NASCAR, IndyCar, like all that stuff it pales in comparison to like global racing, right? And like going into a topic we talked about on the Cars and Kicks show recently, Ford went to Nürburgring to race the Mustang GTD to show the world what they could do. It's like, you have to perform on these other levels to really be important. Like, you can't be like, well, partially because Toyota Camrys whoop your ass in NASCAR, but like, you can't be an American company and be like, yeah, we won NASCAR, when the cars don't look like cars that we buy or anything, right? And they don't have any kind of carryover. It's just like a big marketing. It seems like, not that Formula One isn't a big money laundering scheme.
Allegedly.
But, speaking of, little off topic, but Fabio Briatore selling his Formula One collection, which is undeniably the greatest collection of Formula One cars on the planet, makes me wonder what he's up to. But yeah, I don't know, man. I just feel like I feel like in a lot of ways our approach as Americans to Formula One is like trying to rehash or reskin something that's like lipstick on a pig or whatever that saying is, right? Like it's still NASCAR roots. It's still something that doesn't represent like the pinnacle of motorsports and the pinnacle of engineering in the way that Formula One does. And I think Haas is a great example of that, right? Like, yes, they did a little bit better at the end of this year, but like for the first 4 years, we talked about how ridiculous it was and like where they were trying to pull money together and where they're, getting scammed by partners or paying people, that they shouldn't be paying. All of that stuff seems to sits negatively with me in terms of like American teams. And I kind of wish that we would have like a true fresh start in a way, which I know is not possible.
The inverse of that, and that is what I was going to say earlier, the inverse of that is that it felt very much like Formula One is trying to come in and make it an American thing without giving us any sense of ownership or buy-in to F1. So the reason that for that reason, I'm excited because we're going to have an American works team. Granted, like you just mentioned, we're not going to see a Cadillac F1 car that we can buy anytime soon. Granted, Cadillac makes some crazy performance cars now that nobody really cares about. But like,
yeah, and look, like we're talking about the John Player Special Lotus's the livery before the show. Mario Andretti won a Formula One title in that car in 78 or 76 or something like that. Like the legacy of racing with Andretti is much broader than what I'm dumbing it down to for my narrative here. But it just still feels like it's not like an independent, or not even independent. It just feels like it's not like being done in a like exciting new way. It feels like
it's trying to relive high school football moments, right?
Exactly.
Or Uncle Rico.
That's exactly it. Yeah, yep. Exactly. I can throw football over that mountain.
Yep. I get that. I'm hoping it's not that. I'm just trying to. I
hope so too.
Optimistic. Yeah. Whatever, but because it's a works team, and that's what I'm like anchoring all of this on. Yeah, that it's not going to be just a rebadged Ferrari or whatever.
And if they come out with like a black and gold livery and like some John Player ties because the family is connected to it, I'm going to lose my shit. I'm going to buy a bunch of dumb shit that I don't need for a team that's probably not going to do well. And yes, like I'll be a fan, but like right now I'm still skeptic.
Fair enough.
I just feel like you can't judge that team until they become a proper Americans works team. So, like, I think they've got basically house money for the first 2 years. Yes, they're trying to win the press conference, as we always talk about. Sometimes you have to win the press conference before you can win the race. And I think by stationing it in Indianapolis, a place synonymous with the Indy 500, having such a foothold in American racing history, let alone racing history altogether, it makes sense. But yeah, results will be seen on the track. And to the point that both of you have made, barring some sort of Godfather deal that they end up with Lewis and Max as their first driving pair, I'm not expecting points until maybe the back half of the second year, because I don't think, much like any other sport with expansion teams, they're going to do that well right off the bat.
Yeah, I think, and I love Indianapolis. I think there's a lot of just a lot of cool history there anyway for racing, but I think it's also like part of me is a little bit maybe burned by Haas, because I feel like we did give them the same benefit of the doubt the first couple of seasons, and then it was like, okay, well, I don't know how many seasons are we going to do this. Like then, like when you have somebody like Gunther who's out in front of the team and is like entertaining, and then he gets canned, It's like, okay, well, like drivers aren't sticking with the team. There's not a lot of like reason to be a Haas fan other than like if you're a, air quotes here, American F1 fan, right? Like the drivers have changed, the team's changed a bunch. You know, there's not like a through line for anything on those teams in particular. And I know that's typical for the bottom half of the grid anyway.
Yeah. Now they shacked up with a French idiot. Anyway,
It's the most American thing they could have done.
That'll be my last dig at Rohit for the pod.
Okay.
So I did just see, as I was kind of scrolling here, was this December 13th? So just a few days ago, Christian Horner said that Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson, quote, would be the candidates to replace Perez for 2025.
So Liam Lawson,
I feel like that's the first actual acknowledgement of potential replacement for Perez.
and for all intents and purposes, it should be Yuki, but we know that's not going to happen, and that's not fair. At this point, I get very annoyed about it. It's becoming one of those things that kind of makes my blood boil, because I don't know what else Yuki has to do to get a shot at that, because I feel at this point, he's the most qualified. Unless you're bringing somebody like Gasly or Albon back, there's no point bringing in someone else unless you're just yanking his chain.
Yeah, I think Lawson's got it. I think he's proven that he's at least as fast as Yuki or thereabouts, and he's a little bit cooler of a cucumber. So I think he fits in to be Max's junior for that time. And if he does anything slightly better than Perez, they win the Constructors next year.
And I still think it's a big bet to put Liam Lawson in that second chair, because as good and as many flashes of promise as we might have seen from him, it's still a big ask for someone of his lack thereof pedigree to take that second seat at Red Bull and bring them back to the Constructors.
It can't be worse, though, right?
It shouldn't. And we know, if anything, that if it is, they're going to have a quicker trigger on him than they would Perez, because he doesn't seem to have the financial backing that Checo has, which ultimately becomes Checo's most defining characteristic, at least as a racer.
Yeah, but if Lawson doesn't work out, they'll figure out a way to get Colapinto next year.
And that's when, if I was Yuki, I would just protest and be like, I'm done. I'm done with you bitches.
I think as soon as Honda is gone from RB, Yuki's gone. Whether it be to another team, like my dream scenario of him going to Aston Martin to race with his hero, Fernando.
That'd be amazing. I hope when he does leave, he's a giant helmet about it.
Yes.
Not even a bit.
Bit of a helmet.
No, a giant helmet. There's no... On that note, do you guys want to tell everybody where they can find our helmets?
Wow.
I'll start. You can find me on OnlyFans at the Guadalajaran Gooch Grabber, or on Blue Sky at Rohit M13. Nick, where can they find you?
I don't even know where. At Nick Ingvall on all the platforms. Blue Sky is actually by far my favorite platform right now, but there's not enough people on there. So get on there and let's have some conversation. Todd, what about you, man?
I'm just going to say Instagram. I don't have a Blue Sky yet, and Twitter's a cesspool. So Instagram, dadshoe.jpg, and more importantly, see us all in the Discord. Link down below.
We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.